If you simply desire God to reveal Himself to you, He'll become more real to you than anything in this world.
Amen.
That you can analyze with your small human brain. And that is the extent of my success in leading my friend to the Lord. That is the extent of my ability to make God real to him. I was unsuccessful. So I began to do what we often mistake as the least we can do, but it's the most that we can do. Always remember that. I began to pray for my friend every day that God would convict his heart and that he would have absolutely no rest in his life until he gave his heart and his life to the Lord. And I would pray this prayer every day for my friend and his loving wife. And while I was praying it, and after I would pray that prayer even, I would spend great amounts of time thinking of what a wonderful thing it is, of course, for us to desire someone that we love and care for to know the Lord. I would also think as well how horrible a thing it is for me to do. To pray that that man have no rest till he give his heart and life to the Lord, knowing that if God answered my prayer, he was going to have a miserable time for the rest of his life until he gave his heart and his life to the Lord. These are the things that I would think as I would pray day after day after day after day, that God would reveal himself to my friend, because I simply wasn't able to, and none of us are. So my friend himself became diagnosed with cancer, as my dad did and passed away. And he has it in his bones. Cancer is as cancer is. All of us here are familiar with it. It affects everybody differently, but in my friend's case, he has good days and he has bad. He has good spells and he has bad spells. It was during one of those bad times that he had an infection in his blood and they couldn't diagnose what was causing the infection. His blood counts were a mess. And the doctors had given up hope that he was going to pull out of it. They expressed that they didn't know what was causing it, and according to that, they didn't know what to do to help him. And his health was declining. They did not expect him to recover from that and live yet longer in this world. And during this time, as I was made aware of this, I wondered, should I jump on an airplane and go and see my friend one more time and try and make God real to him and try and lead him to the Lord? Because I couldn't bear the thought of him leaving this world and spending eternity anywhere other than in my Lord's glory. And then his condition worsened to where all of us were certain that he wasn't going to make it through. And not only that, his wife also at the same time was in the hospital, stricken in bed by a back surgery, and she couldn't even be with him. And he had been mostly unconscious, in and out of consciousness for a period of 3 days there. And I prayed and I asked the Lord to give him more time, or let me know if you need me to fly away and spend time with my friend. And I felt a comfort that it was all going to be all right. And for 3 days, my friend laid in the hospital, mostly unconscious. He was in and out of consciousness, but even in his conscious state, he was under the influence of much drugs, really incoherent. I tell you something very important right now about God's realness. I prayed many days that God would give my friend no rest until he gave his heart and his life to the Lord. And I spent much time thinking how miserable his life must be if God was answering that prayer. My friend pulled through that 3 days. Him and his wife recovered speedily. Her from her back surgery, and him from his blood infection. Beyond doctor's explanation. Not only did they recover quickly, they were able to come to our daughter Brandy's wedding last fall, and none of us thought it was going to be possible. So in their miraculous recovery, of course, I called and was talking to them, and it was a fascinating thing to me. These two people who were not believers in God, the first thing that they done in that telephone conversation was express to me that they had received a miracle. And not much time had to pass till Brandy's wedding, and our friends came to stay with us for her ceremony. And I thought to myself, they're not going to be here long. And we're so busy with the wedding, getting prepared and entertaining guests and at our home and getting prepared for the wedding and stuff. And I thought, there's just not going to be time for me to even spend a moment alone with my friend to try yet again to make God real to him. And I was right. I never got that moment. And after Brandy's wedding, we were preparing a meal for all the friends that know our guests to come and see them if they wanted to and spend time with them at our home because they had to leave again the next day. And I remembered that day thinking, boy, I'm trying to make God real to these people. And here it is Sunday, I'm not even at church, I'm at home cooking pig for a big party. I was kind of feeling bad about myself and the lack of opportunity I had to talk to my friend again about the Lord. And I was out on the back porch tending my smoker as I was smoking 3 pork shoulders. And my friend came out to me. And I thought, okay, this is my first chance, and it's a good one. Here we are all alone on the back porch. I never got to say a word. Never got to breathe a word. My friend began to tell me. He said, I have something I need to tell you. He said, you know, when I was in the hospital, they didn't expect me to live. He said I had an infection in my blood that they couldn't explain. And nothing they gave me was effective in treating it and making it go away. They expected me to die. And he said for 3 days, he said, I was unconscious. He said, the 3 days that I laid in that hospital, unconscious, 3 entire days, 3 24-hour periods. He said the entire time that I was in that unconscious state, he said a person paced back and forth beside my bed. And he said every time for 3 continuous days that person would get to the head of my bed, they would open a book. And they would look in that book. And then they would look at me. And then they would pace again. For 3 continuous days that my friend lay in unconsciousness. And for 3 continuous days non-stop, that person paced back and forth beside his bed. And every time he got to the head of that bed, he would open that book, and he would look in that book, and he would look at my friend, and then he would close that book, and he would pace again. I said to my friend, I said, do you know what that person was looking for? And he said to me, I sure do. I said, he was looking for that in that book to see if your name was in it. He said, I know that. I said, well, is your name in that book now? He said, it sure is.
Amen.
He said, what about, I said, what about your wife? He said, hers too. Now I want to tell you something about God and His realness. Nothing I can say, nothing I can do can make Him real to any of you. But if you desire Him to be real to you, I promise He can be more real to you than anything in this world. The most interesting thing that my friend said to me when he shared that story with me of that man pacing back and forth beside his bed for 3 days, the most interesting comment he made to me about that story when he finished telling it as the tears ran down his face, he pointed his finger at me and said exactly what I tried so hard to express to him for so many years. He pointed his finger at me when he was done telling me that story. And he said, it was more real to me than you are. That's how God is. He can be more real to you than the person that you are closest to and dearest to in this life.